Good day. Suppose like me you're here for one last look. Perhaps you haven't heard? She's being sold, Cutty Sark, to the Portuguese. She won't be back to London anymore. She'll be bound for places like Portugal, Africa, Brazil, and all the places where they do their trading. Feels good to be on deck. Usually I'm not allowed on board, I'm a dock worker. Don't worry, I'll be on my best behaviour. I know us dock workers have a reputation for fighting, drinking and swearing, but most of my time is spent keeping body, soul and family together. Raj Fernandez, pleasure to meet you. Only stevedores are allowed on board ships in docks. Stevedores are skilled workers that load the ships and supervise the unloading of ships. When things come off the ship onto the dockside, that's when I come in. I've done well for myself over these years because I'm big, strong and reliable. I'm one of the regular workers, a royal. That means when I come to East India docks, I know there's work for me, guaranteed. I used to be a casual, which meant might work every day, might not. I'd have to go for the call on, stand on the stones as we'd call it, with hundreds of other men, shoving myself to the front, hoping to get noticed by the foreman. Let me show you what the call on's like. I'll be the foreman. Don't tell him I did this. Who wants to work and make some money? I must say, you're all so polite and civilised, I do admire that. But let me assure you, when it comes to the real call on, there's a lot more pushing, kicking and fighting. Remember, you don't work, you don't earn, you don't eat. Right, so, who am I picking today? You know, I'm definitely picking you. You're probably wondering why I'm definitely picking you. Don't you remember? You were buying me drinks last night at the Railway Tavern. That's what it's like for us dock workers. We spend a lot of our wages staying in the foreman's good books. And him and his cups. Still, at least we've got the docker's tanner now. That's a full 6p an hour to you. It was 4p in my father's day. It went up to 5p. And it was a real struggle to get to 6p. I'm sure you all remember the Great Dock Strike 6 years ago in 1889. At first no one thought we would succeed. After all, for every one man on strike, there were 10 men desperate for work. And you know what they said about the work we do? Anyone could do it. No skill necessary, only muscle and strength. Do you know they called us a mere brute force with a brute appetite? Huh. A class of labour as unskilled as the power of a hurricane? Huh. Well, they unleashed a hurricane, all right. When the strike started, no one thought it would last long. Men would replace us. No one would support us. But we had two great leaders, Ben Tillett and John Burns. Do you know John Burns stood on my shoulders once to shout at the strike breakers, telling them to join our struggle. And the match girls of Brighton May had struck before us and won. So the stevedores said, "We will support our poorer brothers." And that made the dock owners sit up and take notice. The whole port ground to a halt. The newspapers said if any more people go on strike, the whole of London will be on holiday. And our women folk backed us all the way despite the hardship. They pawned anything they could get their hands on. Tools, boots, suits, jackets. They put signs across the street saying no rent paid while we are on strike. Landlords need not call. You may have seen one of our marches from the dockside to Tower Hill. Or Hyde Park. You weren't there. Well, will you join me on a march today to make up for it? Let's march for the worthy cause of the dock workers. Better pay for the dock workers! Better pay for the dock workers! Whoa. Well done on marching with me today. Do you know when we did march for the worthy cause of the dock workers, 20,000 of us marched together. But by the end, 100,000. I must say though, those 5 weeks without work and no pay were difficult. But the strike committee did arrange for food tickets so we didn't starve, and the public themselves donated generously to the strike fund. In time though, we got to breaking point and the money was about to run out. But that's when our brothers in Australia Our brothers in Australia sent us money and saved the strike. £30,000 in the end. That bought a lot of food, let me tell you. The dock owners fought on tooth and nail though. They said, we'll give you 6p an hour in January. Huh, good for them, not good for us. You see, January is the quietest month on the docks. We fought on still, and we got our pay rise in November, one of the busiest months on the docks. Hurrah! So now, when I go to work, I get what Mr. Burns calls the full round orb of the Dockers Tanner. And we've got a union as well now, the Dockers Union. So nothing like this will ever happen again. So we won! Hurrah! Strike over! Hurrah! And back to work we go. No. Back to work we go in the Port of London. Do you know London's the biggest port in the world, bringing in 15 million tons of things every year? Does anyone know what kind of things come through the ports? Very good. Wool. The ship always brings back wool. In my father's day she brought back tea, but the steamers bring that back now. You probably think wool's this soft fluffy thing, light as well perhaps. But put it in a great big bale like the ones aboard this ship, they take some shifting, I'll tell you that. At least they get put onto the rail wagons. 50 bales an hour unloaded, 5 whole days to unload one ship. Oh, almost forgot. My coat reminded me of it. My coat's been dyed with indigo. We get indigo through the port as well. Do you know, you can always tell when someone's been working with indigo as well. They come into the pub with blue hands and blue faces. What do you think my favourite cargo is? The rum and the wine, of course. Hard work, all right, but once in a while, you get a snifter or a waxer, as we call it. Gaugers use these spikes or spears to take a sample, and when it's still dripping, I get to have a taste. If you know someone, the London Docks in Wapping is a good place to go. They organise tastings for well-to-do folks such as yourselves. They do warn about the effects of drinking in a vault though. I myself have rolled a few barrels in there, and let me assure you, the air itself is enough to make you woozy. Any others you might know of? Of course, why didn't I think of that? The Cutty Sark's most famous cargo, tea. You may have seen the tea chests of all shapes and sizes to fit in all parts of the hold. The low quality tea, the ground chops, is stacked on the bottom and the sides in case the ship takes on water, and the good quality tea stacked on top of that. Canny people those stevedores. Any others? You are a very astute person, aren't you? The coffee and the spices, quite right. The most fragrant ships to unload. They smell a lot better than the streets around where I live, I'll tell you that. How about guano? Sounds nice and exotic, doesn't it? Guano. Would you unload guano? My father used to unload a lot of it. Don't see much of it these days. If you don't know what guano is, I'll tell you. It's bird muck, used for fertilizer. And what goes well with the rum and the wine? Not cheese. I'm a simple man. Tobacco. Most of the tobacco goes to the tobacco docks, but once in a while, we get it here too. You've got to be on your best behaviour. It's expensive cargo. But once in a while, you can get enough to fill your pouch. But I never said that. Ah yes, very good, timber. You know, you can always tell a timber worker just by looking at them. We call them lumpers. They've got this great big lump on the back of their neck called hummies. Comes from carrying the timber as they walk. And they're very proud of their hummy as well. Do you know timber's not stored in warehouses either? It's floated in pools of water to prevent it from drying out. Take a trip south of the river to Canada docks and see for yourself. Do you know, I reckon I've unloaded them all. Yes, I'd say so. I've unloaded them all. When they're on the ship, I don't touch them. That's the job of the stevedores, well remembered. But when they land on the quayside, that's when I get to work, and back-breaking work it is. I have a hook to grab onto wool bales. Most of the wool gets put onto the rail wagons, remember, but the rest of the goods need to be trolleyed to the warehouse, stacked floor to ceiling, side to side. Oh, hard and dangerous work it is. Do you know, I've broken a few things over the years. My nose once, a couple fingers. I've been lucky though. I've known of men who've been crushed under falling cargo. I've known of men who've lost an arm. They won't be coming back to work then, there will be no one to look after them. They say an accident on the docks happens every 15 minutes. And we work long hours as well from dawn till dusk, sometimes longer if the ship's in a hurry. But since the dock strike, which you lovely people help to march on, I get an extra tuppence an hour overtime, so I'm not at all upset when that happens. At the end of the day, I walk through the dock gates, but the port doesn't end there. There's a whole world that exists beyond the dock gates that depends on the ships, the cargo, and of course their money. They call it Sailor Town. Slop shops for sailors to buy their clothes and sea boots, chandlers making rope and line, and of course pubs for the sailors to drink away their wages. If you're feeling brave enough, there's one pub I'd recommend. You might have heard me mention it earlier. It's called the Railway Tavern. But if you really want to look like a local, call it Charlie Brown's. He's the landlord and the king of Limehouse, as we call him. His pub is a thing of wonder, chock full of curiosities. Shark's bones, figureheads, stuffed flying fish. Ooh, if you'd like an exotic animal as a pet, head over to Jam Racks in Sailor Town, full of them. Walked past there the other day and there was a parrot swearing worse than any docker I've ever known. But I shouldn't tempt you really. I'd be alright in Sailor Town, they know me. You well-dressed, well-to-do folk would stick out like sore thumbs ripe for the plucking. Not even the peelers. The police go down there unless they're in twos or threes. There are all types of unsavoury characters in Sailor Town feeding off the unwary. Get a sailor drunk and dancing and fleece him off his money in the saloons. And if he's got any money left over, the bullies and the fighting men will relieve him of it. Do you know, I once saw a sailor with no clothes on at all, red-faced on his way to cover his modesty at Rag Fair. And we've got some other interesting jobs in Sailor Town as well, you know. How about being a mudlark? Mudlarks walk along the riverbank when the tide's low, keeping an eye out for valuable things that have washed up. Gold coins, silver coins, jewellery. Or how about being a tosher? Toshers do the same jobs as mudlarks, but not in the river, in the sewers. Ooh. All right then. If not a mudlark or a tosher, how about being a pure collector? Sound fun? Pure is another word for dog's muck. Ooh. So the next time you see someone collecting dog's muck, you'll know they're a pure collector. But despite all our curious jobs and curious ways, Sailor Town's home for me. There's nowhere in London like it. We've got sailors of all nationalities. Portuguese, Spaniards, Scandinavians, plenty of Chinese around Limehouse as well. There's even a place there called Chinatown. And of course, there are Lascars like me. Lascars are men from India and Ceylon. My father was a Lascar, he shipped here years ago. He was meant to ship back but got stranded here. There he was, walking along the riverbank thinking, how am I going to get home? When he happened along an Indian woman, knelt in the mud, crying her eyes out. That Indian woman was an ayah. Ayahs are governesses or nannies, hired by British families to look after their children. And as part of their contract, their travel back to India is paid for as well. Well, this particular British family, after 1 week, said to their ayah, we don't want you anymore, and left her at King's Cross Station with only £1 to her name. The woman muddled her way through the streets of London to the riverbank and knelt to the mud and cried her eyes out. How am I going to get home? She said. She looked up suddenly and saw the big Lascar. She said to him, how am I going to get home? He said to her, how am I going to get home? Well, you know what happened after that, don't you? All right, then I'll tell you. They became good friends. They fell in love, got married, and had me. Home for all three of us now is a lodging house for sailors that we own. When I'm on the docks, I keep an eye out for sailors that look like me, that might want to rent a bed from us, eat some home-cooked food cooked by my mother, speak the language that they know. Vango, vango, nalla sapa de I like to say. You should see their faces light up. It means come, you'll get some good food this way. I'll be honest though, I am a little bit worried about the future. The docks aren't doing as well as they used to. There are so many of them now that the rates and profits have been reduced and ships are getting bigger. Cutty Sark's 938 tonnes. Some of these steamers are 12,000 tonners now. The docks weren't made for these big ships to come up to port and unload. That's why the docks are moving steadily downriver. There's even a deep water docks 26 miles downriver in Tilbury. Problem with Tilbury docks, they only pay country wages because Tilbury is not in London. So what am I going to do, eh? Nah, don't you worry about me. If there's one thing I've learned about growing up in London is to stay bright and hopeful. You stay bright and hopeful and the way will show itself to you. I will be saying goodbye to this ship though. I doubt I'll ever see her again. So if you'd like to come and say hello, I'll be around here for a while, but not too long. I've got my shift to the docks to get to, remember? So I'll bid you good day. But as you go about your day, spare a thought for your old mate Raj Fernandez, working away on the other side of that 20-foot dock wall, keeping ships and cargo safe and ensuring London remains the warehouse of the world. Good day.